Welcome to the Local Business Insider Podcast with the Small Business Owners Alliance. This is a space where we sit down with real entrepreneurs and talk about the wins, the lessons, and the honest moments that come with running a business. I'm your host, Nicole Redinbaugh, small business owner, insurance broker, and founder of the Small Business Owners Alliance here in the Omaha area. Whether you're local to Nebraska or just love learning from real-world business stories, you're in the right place. All right. Thanks for joining us today here at the Small Business Owners Alliance podcast. We have a special guest with us today here, Michael Bosaw with Homeward Handyman Services. Michael, so glad to have you joining us.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you invited me.
Yeah, thank you. So we're really excited to kind of get to hear a little bit more about your business and some tips on some of the things that we see, you do really well. Specifically when it comes to price transparency and ways that you kind of help build relationships through providing education for your clients. So really excited to learn a little bit more about that. But before we do, if we could just kind of have you share a little bit, we know you're third generation carpenter, but if you could tell us like what that experience was leading up to this point of you starting Homeward Handyman Services.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So my grandpa, on my dad's side, was a union carpenter back in Illinois, taught my dad how to be a carpenter. And eventually my dad moved down into the Omaha area and kind of ran his own little business, kind of doing light remodeling and such. And he did a lot of that, working with other remodelers through my high school years. And all the way up until about 10 years ago. He ended up passing away, unfortunately. But at that time, I had worked with him a lot when I was in high school, spent a lot of summers working with him, learning a lot of new things. And then, of course, after high school, I wanted to go gain more skills and experience. So after that, I actually worked with a cabinet company out of Gretna. I actually think they were called Cabinet Company of Nebraska. I worked with them for a year or two, building and installing custom cabinets for a lot of the Malibu homes off of 204th. Did that for a bit, worked with a couple property management companies, a couple other small remodelers. Did try and start a business about 10 years ago, back when I thought all you needed to succeed was just be able to swing a hammer and do good work, before I learned all the background stuff. And big surprise, that shut down within a year. My first daughter came around and I got to a point where I need to make sure I can provide, as well as I can, insurance and food on the table and such. So after that, I actually was talking to somebody that was at our church, and he invited me to look into the Carpenters Union in this area. And when going through that, I went through a proper 4-year apprenticeship, worked my way through that, worked with a couple different commercial companies. Some did a lot of high-end finishes, some were more of the grunt work, but it was a lot of good experience for me. In my last 2 or 3 years working commercially, I did work as a foreman, running work for a lot of the hospitals, working between Methodists, children's, and then also doing some work on like the metro campuses as well. 3 years ago, it got to a point where I had some nice elderly people or, people that live in a retirement community were reaching out for someone that could help fix things around their house. And I was hearing the same story everywhere. We try and call people, they never call back, or they show up, they look at it, but we never get an estimate. Or sometimes we even get an estimate, and even when we say we're ready, no one shows up to do the work. So I started doing that as side work while also working as a job site foreman. And it was starting to get to a point where it was hard for me to be home. And my wife and I had to sit down and talk about what we should do moving forward. And I saw a lot of value in this, helping people that just can't get these medium to large contractors to come out to do these repairs in their homes. It's not too many companies that'll come out unless you want to have your whole kitchen or your bathroom remodeled, or even debt companies, fence companies that won't come do the repairs unless you want to go with new. And most of them have a certain minimum price range before they'll even consider looking at a project. So at that point, about 3 years ago, my wife and I sat down, we talked about it, and I decided it was time to start Homeward Handyman Services. And I've been doing this for about 3 years now.
That's great. Well, what a neat story to hear, kind of about the progression and experience that you've gotten through to get to this point, because I think, as a handyman, that can mean a lot of different things to different people, of what the scope of work is that you can accept, or should accept because of your experience. So it's nice to know that you have both residential and commercial, and various size projects that you have worked on. So that's really helpful. And I think one thing that you mentioned there, I know as an insurance agent, a lot of the clients I've talked to and just friends and family have experienced, you're right, trying to get somebody to come out and give you a quote. And then if you can give them to give you a quote, getting them to actually follow through with it when you're ready to is so difficult. And I think it's just there's really not enough talented, skilled people to do that type of work for the demand that's there. So I love that that's kind of been part of your story too, to provide that reliability of service too. In the videos and things that you post, I really love that you talk a lot about price transparency. You'll kind of show the before and afters, and then even like usually share how much a project may have cost, just to kind of give people a ballpark. And I think that's really helpful, because we don't see a lot of that normally with others in the trades, whether that be, in the handyman space or other skilled trades. How do you feel that being transparent about that pricing has helped build trust with customers?
So I feel like this is, what's the best way to phrase this? Two sides of a sandwich. You have your client side, and I think with that, it's kind of a part of an education. A lot of people are still stuck on the early 2000s HGTV mindset of things are slapped together, they're very fast paced, and with that, a lot of people feel like the repairs around their home don't take much. It's enough that people might not feel comfortable doing it themselves, but at the same time, they feel like, it only costs so much to do. And so with being the transparency, it does kind of a couple different things. One, it kind of creates a picture that shows a finished product and has value added to it. So then anyone that's looking into repairing a deck or something like that, a couple deck boards, they can look at it and go, oh, he just did this and it was a bit of an update. And I can see that, that's almost the same size as my deck and he did it for about $4,000. Okay, well, I wonder if that's within our budget. We can look into this, talk about it and all that. And they can reach out to me or they can talk amongst themselves. And it also helps with, unfortunately, it will cut out tire kickers. Before I started the transparency, there would be a lot of wasted effort. And this is more of a business standpoint now. A lot of wasted effort of people just shopping, just want to get an idea. So by doing that and starting showing the transparency, a lot of these connections I would get through Facebook or any other social media where I post these had cut down dramatically. But 9 times out of 10, the people that are calling usually are like, hey, I just saw your post. We have something that feels like it's about the same. Could we talk about it? And, those people that call already have that kind of more realistic expectations of what needs to be done. And then on the other side of the sandwich is for the other handyman or the other people that are in the service doing these trades. There's a lot of guys that can do amazing work. They could probably do work better than I can. But a lot of these guys still don't know how to charge. They don't know what they're supposed to charge. They think, hey, I'm charging twice as much as what I've made for another company. I worked at a company making $18 an hour. So if I charge $36, that should be good enough, and then these are the guys that usually get that 1 year limit, like I did, that just get burned out because they always feel like they're just chasing money. No matter what they're doing, they always feel like they're behind or they have to sell a job to get more money, So having guys see this and see, oh, he did that, you know, maybe I'm not charging enough, and they can reflect on what they have going on. Like, I just did a deck like that too, and man, I almost spent all of that on the materials alone, so there's a lot of strategy to that I like to figure in, because every time I post, it's not just one direction, it's posting for like full broad education, you
That's
know.
Yeah, I think that education is really important. And I love the mentality you have too of it's not just educating your potential prospects, but it's also educating others in similar fields, which I think so often people get wrapped up in that competitive mindset that they feel like they can't be transparent because, gosh, they might be giving away the secret, and somebody can undercut them. But you're right. Like anybody's price that goes into a bid, sometimes they're just not educated or experienced enough in how to price it properly. Sometimes the experience level and quality of craftsmanship is so different, and two, there's people that do it on the side that may not have the insurance and may not have all the know-how that they need of what to avoid because permits are required or what have you. So I love the fact that you bring that transparency for all audiences. With that, you share a lot of the tips too for homeowners. It's not even just always about advertising your services and things like that, but you share other useful tips that homeowners can implement to make sure that they're doing what they need to protect their investment. Kind of expanding a little bit more on that education from that angle, why do you feel like that's so important for the service industry as well?
I feel like there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers in the area, like, and I'm a full advocate for it. Like, I think everyone should have the opportunity to work with their hands. There's a certain amount of joy when you can take something from raw material and turn it into a good finished product, or know that you are providing a good maintenance and you're creating longevity in your home or business.
Mhm.
So with doing these educational things, I feel like, one, it teaches people proper ways to do it, whether it's
Mhm.
a do-it-yourselfer or somebody that's trying to provide services that doesn't know if they're getting the right materials, they're not getting the right information. So with doing that, and once again, it's still me reaching out to a broader audience, and having that. And I think it's nice to also explain the process so people can look at a wall. You can look at the drywall on a wall and know there's more than just a board on it. There's a lot that goes into
Yeah.
taking this from a raw structure to framed to all of the stuff that's in the wall, and then you have your drywall, and it's not just put drywall up and paint it. There's finish work. There's a lot of things that go into going from point A to point B, and doing that, I think, helps that, and also allowing people to see what the options they have are, like, I think I did a post a few months ago, treated lumber versus composite lumber, on a
Mhm.
deck. Treated is cheaper than composite, but treated also only lasts so long, and then you also have maintenance on that. Composite, yes, it's almost 2 to 3 times more expensive for both your materials and your labor, but
Mhm.
the longevity of it will sometimes balance out over time.
Mhm.
It's one of those things where you purchase a product and a labor or service that goes with it, knowing what the end goal is. With that, you have something set up like that, or with you're doing different types of plywoods, you can't just take a regular OSB wafer board or whatever and think you're going to build cabinets out of it. You can,
Yeah.
and they'll might do something, if it's utility purpose and you just need a box, you have a box. But if you're looking for something that's going to have longevity and look pretty, you might want to go with some higher end. It holds together better. It has more cutability. You can do more things with it.
Mhm.
So doing these educational posts, I think, are important. Um, And of course, every once in a while I try to do business tie-ins too. I might do something, whether it's to advertise my business, but also like, or I'll do posts for people that are running a business.
Mhm.
I've done posts where like, hey, how to try and figure out like a quick crash course to figure out what your hourly rate should be.
Mhm.
Having those there is a nice thing. So it's kind of an organic thing every week. Monday morning comes around, I do my video updates of what's going on, where we're at, and I'm already thinking, what do I have going on this week? What can I talk about? Something that's related. That way it's not a copy paste and just make up something random. I always like to keep something that's in line with what I have going on that week.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that there's just something powerful about getting behind the camera and sharing that. It doesn't necessarily have to be pretty or perfect, but I think it just helps build that relationship virtually where people kind of feel like they know you before they even talk to you live. And I think that makes that all the difference in the world for that like, know, and trust factor. And to your point, if they can see the full process, it's not just that HTV magic that snap your fingers and all the work is done and it looks beautiful. That they actually get to see the behind the scenes to know kind of what goes into that time and labor and experience wise. So that's great. Is there anything that you've kind of seen, other than kind of the time frame of how long something takes or the amount of work that goes into something? Is there anything else that you've really seen that homeowners tend to often misunderstand about handyman or home repair service professionals like yourself?
So, and this is one that I always have fun with, is because a handyman, it goes back to the 80s, the 90s, unfortunately what we call the chuck in the truck. It's a guy down the street that's just doing this as a part-time gig, but he
Mhm.
happens to know how to band-aid everything, not necessarily put everything together. And I think that's a stigma
Mhm.
that I'm trying to, I can't say erase, because obviously in the area we still have those guys. I can still see them around in a beat up, rusty old truck. Two old gentlemen, that just drive around and just do random repairs because they've been buddies for 40 years, and that's fine. And there are clients for that service, and there's a service for specific clients, and
Mhm.
it is a stigma that I will probably always have. Some kind of troubleshooting with. And I think that's another reason why I try and be very transparent. I think people need to understand that a proper handyman is a very well-rounded specialist. They're just in line with somebody that only does drywall, somebody that only does carpet. When you hire a good qualified, handyman, you're hiring somebody that can do multiple scopes of work. You don't need to call around trying to find an electrician, a plumber, and stuff like that to replace an outlet, fix your sink that's been dripping,
Mhm.
and also possibly replace a couple boards. You can have a one call with a guy like me or any other good quality handyman service, know that you can give them a list and they can handle it because they are properly trained to provide a quality service and get you from point A to point B. And you
Mhm.
are not getting a band-aid, you are getting a replacement. This is make it like new. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I always have fun with, is just coming across some of the people that still think a handyman is a $20 an hour guy, if that, that will just show up, do some stuff by the hour, and then leave, and you never see him again. And that's another sad thing is, I still see it online every once in a while. Is there's watch out for so and so. I paid
Mhm.
them this much to do this, they didn't show up, or I paid them this much and look at what they did, and it's just completely trash. He's like, no, that's you know being a proper service, a branded vehicle, branded shirts, clean appearance, very good communication. When I have a conversation with a client, even at the estimate, I'll say, okay, what is the problem you have? Let's talk about, so we can build a solution together, and then
Mhm.
I can walk them through the steps. So there's no guesses, no surprises of going, oh, why are you tearing my walls open? Oh, well, did I not tell you that I need to open these up to do such and such? Oh, we didn't know that was going to happen. No, it's like we walk through the steps, we have good, clear communication and coordinate properly, and that's the biggest thing I do, and why I did this business, is to make sure people understand that there is such thing as a good premium service.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. You're not just going and grabbing some Joe Schmo down the street who knows a little bit about this or that you are working with a professional who's got the full business set up and the business overhead to go with that. So needs to charge more premium prices for the work that they do while still, doing what you can to keep it affordable and accessible. But you can't always just compare price to price. And we see this in my insurance business too. So many people are like, well, it's $100 cheaper to go this route. And it's like, well, you're not really comparing apples to apples. You've got to really look at a lot of different factors other than just that bottom line. So
Yeah, and I've come across that plenty of times too, where you have someone that wants to have certain things replaced in their home and they have expectations of what they want, and you could provide them an estimate and they can go, well, that was much higher than the previous people. I said, okay, these are the doors that you asked for. We're going to replace about 10 of these doors. This is the specific door you want. These doors are $650 a piece from a supply house. I see the exact same doors that look similar at a regular, big box store like Menards or Home Depot for $75. So would you like me to price for those? Or would you maybe ask your other, the other people that provide an estimate, make sure that we have those apples to apples? Because, 9 times out of 10, if there's more than a 30% difference between my price and somebody else's, something in the scope has changed. And that's why I like to be very detailed with my scopes of work, what materials are supplying, so people can have the opportunity to see that apples to apples, because there are people that take value in quality, but there are also clients that take, value in cutting costs, and you know what? And there's certain services those are their clients. They're just not mine.
Yep. Nope, that makes total sense. And I think that that's important to set those boundaries and know, what kind of business you are and what types of clients you serve. And, it's always up to the customer of who they choose to work with. But I think that you do a great job in kind of what you share online to kind of set that precedent and expectation. So I think that's great. And I think that does a good job of between the transparency and being upfront and detailed, and really establishing and solidifying long-term relationships where, you do the honey-do list right now, but they invite you back for future projects too because of that. And, that it's always easier to get more business from an existing client than it is to keep always bringing in new clients constantly. So. Well, we really appreciate your time here today, Michael. If somebody is interested in working with you for a project that they have here in our local area, what's the best way for them usually to get in touch with you or kind of start that process?
They can absolutely reach out. Phone number is 402-915-0824. I have a heavy presence on Facebook. I am currently looking into LinkedIn because I hear that's another good place to start putting posts on. Or you can also put in a request form through my website, www.homewardhandymanservices.com. And always want people to keep in mind that estimates are every Wednesday.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, great. Well, we'll drop that information for your contact info in the show notes so that people have access to that as well. And, to our audience, if you're not already, we definitely encourage you to please follow and like Homeward Handyman Services, as well as please engage with this video, comment, and subscribe to the Local Business Insider podcast for more valuable conversation and tips from other local business professionals with the Small Business Owners Alliance Network. But again, Michael, we appreciate your time, and till next time, take care.
You as well.